Today, we're looking at another re-release by Round 2. This is another re-release from their vintage model line collection, originally done by AMT and MPC over the years. This one is a little bit different than the others. The others were releases from the times when the movies came out. So we're talking 77, 1980, 1983. This one is from 1997. So more modern by about 15 years. Now, clearly, still, this mold is about 25 years old, so it's not as good as things like the Razor Crest or any of their modern Star Trek kits. But still, I think we're going to see a big leap in quality from those other kits to this, the TIE Fighter. The other thing to note is when this kit was released in 1997, it was a twin pack. You got 2 TIE Fighters and a display base to go between them. This release is just 1 TIE Fighter, and really I'm fine with that if that gets it at the right price point to get it on the shelves and get it in front of people. The one thing I do miss is I don't think this comes with a base, and I think that we'll find ourselves missing the base more than we will find ourselves missing a second TIE Fighter. I like what they've done with the box art. By the time they got to the 90s, the box art was a little more garish. They've gone back to a more vintage style. This more matches the box art for the Darth Vader TIE Fighter or the other Star Wars A New Hope release era model kits. So I like the box art. I like the cool semi-vintage look. Around the side, we get Imperial TIE Fighter. Along the top, the authentic TIE Fighter, suitable for the beginning modeler, molded in gray. You can paint it, 29 parts, paint not included. And I should have mentioned this in the beginning, they have made an update to give better proportioned wings for the TIE Fighter. The old ones were a little too square, so these are much more proper and kind of taller than they are wide. Authentic detail, optional clear parts, and a figure for the TIE Fighter pilot. Now, I do not plan on using the clear canopy glass. I like a lot of my Star Wars kits to just be the window frames so you can see inside easily. Along the back of the box, you have the paint guide. I haven't seen the paint guide on the back of the box recently. Usually, they have it on the outside edges of the bottom of the box. So instead of the paint guide along the inside like they usually do, we get some stills from the movie. Looks like most of these are from Return of the Jedi. That one's from A New Hope. So yeah, pretty good work for the box art. If we look at the plastic, looks like we have about 1.5 sprues, just like they did on the AT-ST. They've kind of broken the sprues into a couple of parts so they fit in the box easier. Along with those parts, we also have 2 wings. Now, I'm pretty happy with the plastic. Like we thought, it looks a lot better than it did from the kits that were made in the 70s. So let's take a look at them. And as we look at the plastic, let's look at one of the kits from 1977. This is the Darth Vader Advanced TIE Fighter. There's 2 things I really think this kit was lacking. First, you can see the way the mold was done. You don't have any of the panel lines coming across the front of the kit. The other thing that really bothered me is they had it coming off the sprue right here on some really noticeable places. And when you took it off the sprue, even with some filling and sanding and putting, you can tell those edges just kind of have gaps from where it hit the sprue. So looking at the same kind of part of the TIE Fighter, you can see first, it's attached to the sprue over here on the side. So when you clip it, that edge is going to meet the wing and you're not going to see it, giving us some very nice edges across the front. You can also see panel lines across the front of the TIE Fighter. So right there, we can see better design decisions in 1997 rather than 1977. We can see we've got some pretty good detail across the TIE Fighter. Things look as crisp as they would have been on a model kit from 1997. Now, a lot of this still seems to follow the same construction plan from the Darth Vader TIE Fighter. So you can see we've got some parts that are the inside of the cockpit here. We've got the top hatch. These hubs should be parts for the wings. There's our canopy glass. There's the rear thrusters. So pretty decent. We can work with this. Obviously not as crisp as a kit that would be made now, but still much more detailed than like what we saw on the AT-ST or any of those other kits. There's the pilot's seat, the pilot's controls, a couple add-on parts for little thrusters on the back of the TIE Fighter. There's our TIE Fighter pilot. Here's our two clear parts, just some clear canopy glass to fit underneath the window frame and a piece to fit underneath the top hatch. So I might have to use this glass because that looks like it has the hinge that will let that top hatch open and close. If I don't want to use it, it looks like I would just have to have a top hatch glued in place. And of course, here is our newly proportioned TIE Fighter wing. So obviously you can see taller, not as squat, not as square, and still some pretty good detail. Yeah, very nice texture on those wing panels. And for color reference, this is probably, in all my shots, this is probably the truest to what the plastic color actually is. It is a light gray that's leaning slightly blue, like a TIE Fighter should. All right, it's going to be a pretty straightforward and simple build. I started some work on the TIE Fighter pilot. Since he's dressed all in black, I decided to just put him first in silver and then airbrush over him with some smoke color to make him look very dark, but still have a lot of the detail of the mold visible to see. Same basic idea on the walls of the cockpit. I did it in silver and then I just did a black wash. So you'll still be able to see some of that mechanical detail through the cockpit. I feel the strong contrast is a good way to go since it won't be too easy to see into the cockpit. I figured I'd just make everything stand out so you'd be able to kind of see what's going on. Now, as far as the colors I'm going to paint this, obviously for the panels on the TIE Fighter wings, we're going to go with black. The overall color of the ship is going to be a custom mix that I actually made up for the USS Voyager. I'm going to be using the darker shade of blue-gray I used to kind of do these accent lines on the USS Voyager. I feel that's a pretty good color for the way I like TIE Fighters to look. I like them to look more blue, the way they did in Empire Strikes Back, rather than the gray that they looked in A New Hope. But of course, that's all to personal taste. So this is a mix of haze gray and sky blue mixed together just to give it a little bit of that blue tint. I believe the box is going to recommend just a haze gray for the overall color of the TIE Fighter, which would be a little bit more of A New Hope look. But let's get started in building and painting this ship. So this is my completed authentic Imperial TIE Fighter model kit being put out by Round 2 under the AMT banner. And honestly, this is a very nice kit. It's probably the best made kit of any of their re-releases. Obviously, it's not going to come close to something like the Razor Crest, an incredibly modern, awesome model kit. But this is a very nice TIE Fighter. Wonderful detailing across the wings. Nice detailing around the hatches. Nice details all the way around. Nice panel lines. All right, let's try and get a little bit of light on our TIE Fighter pilot. Like any TIE Fighter, it's a little hard to see inside the cockpit. But with a little bit of light added, you can see the pilot figure in there. And he's well done. Lots of nice detail. So all in all, I only have good things to say about this model kit. It's well done. It fits. It's easy to put together. There is a good level of detail on the kit as a whole. It builds up nice and makes a respectable TIE Fighter. There's only a few things that kind of stick out to me that could have been done better. First, I would have loved to see a dome base included in here, like Round 2 makes. It's just something to stand him on. The only other thing that could be a critique is, and this is just kind of par for the course with the older AMT and MPC releases, there's not really a consistent scale. So I'd love to make a display with the Darth Vader authentic TIE Fighter and the TIE Fighter. They look great together, but they're out of scale to each other. So you can't really make that three-ship scene from A New Hope where they swoop down and try and defend the trench from the rebels. They look good on a shelf together, don't get me wrong. That's a good-looking display in itself, but they're not in scale together, and I'm not sure what would be in scale with the TIE Fighter. I suppose this is listed on the internet as 1/51st scale. And there are 1/48th scale X-Wings, so we could make a nice display with a 1/40th scale X-Wing going up against the TIE Fighter, or have our X-Wing swooping down to attack our TIE Fighter. Yeah, that would look pretty good on the shelf together. So 1/48th scale, 1/51st scale. I can see that working. All in all, I'm really glad to see this model kit hit the store shelves. I think it's really impressive how many Star Wars model kits Round 2 has been able to put out this year. From the two Walkers, the X-Wing, the B-Wing, the Darth Vader TIE Fighter, now this TIE Fighter, and of course Boba Fett Starfighter, and of course the awesome Razor Crest that they've put out recently. I think they're making a great Star Wars line. I can't wait for this to continue. I haven't heard what they're going to be putting out next. I have hopes. For example, I'd love to see an Imperial shuttle being put out again. Or just one of those Naboo in one starfighters. Those would be great to see. And of course, really anxious for them to finally put out their updated Millennium Falcon. But I'm loving the Star Wars line that Round 2 is putting out. I think it's great that people are going to be able to get their hands on these kits again, especially people beginning in the hobby who might run into these kits just in a big box store. It's great to have them out there on the shelves. Thank you guys for following the channel. Thank you for taking a look at my TIE Fighter build. And I believe we're going to start some Star Trek kits, which I'm very excited to do. I'm going to be quite glad to put away my panel line washes. I'm going to be glad to put away all my chipping things and just build some clean, awesome Federation starships again. So Star Trek kits coming up soon. Thank you guys for following the channel. And of course, make sure to check out allscaletrek.com for Star Trek builds, Star Wars builds, just some great sci-fi modeling. Thank you guys. We'll be back soon.